The Premier League makes the most money from TV deals of any league in the world, but what would happen if those TV deals suddenly went to zero? Well, that's what we've done in Football Manager and simulated it 5 years into the future to see how it would affect the league. Not just domestically, I'm talking Champions Leagues, I'm talking Euros, I'm talking World Cups. There's nothing this TV money doesn't touch. Season number 1. The summer transfer window is now over. Liverpool remains top of the league, Tottenham's in the top 4, and Everton's still negative points because of points deductions. But the lack of money is already having an impact. The largest transfer into the entire league for that first summer window, Piotr Zielinski to Man City for a potential total of $30 million, $22.5 million up front. The second biggest transfer was Lucas Gorna-Duoth to West Ham. Festi Ebazele to Tottenham was the fourth biggest deal of the window. I didn't even know who Jordan James is. Oh yes, Harry Suter's been loaned to Fulham. I love that one. Now, the summer transfers do start already completed in Football Manager, so you expect less business than usual, but that's incredibly tiny. As for sales, Richarlison went to Al Ittihad and Pervis Estupiñán went to Al Nassr. Now in January, Aston Villa has managed to work its way to the top of the table with Tottenham, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, United, and Chelsea rounding out the top 7. Luton Town's bottom of the league because of course they are, and Sheffield United would prefer to live in this reality than the actual reality. But what remains to be seen are the January moves. And there were actually some monster moves because that lack of TV money is going to hit next offseason. Lucas Ocampos went from Sevilla to Manchester City for $97 million straight up. Dominic Calvert-Lewin moved to Tottenham for $64 million. Joao Mario moved to Liverpool for $54 million, and a couple of other, medium-sized transfers occurred as well. You wonder if that sort of transfer is going to cause problems for Manchester City now that they can't pretend they have $400 million a year in sponsorship money. Allegedly, is that a knock at the door? They're here. But you know what allegations aren't nearly as true as the Manchester City allegations? The allegations that Raid Shadow Legends is not a fun game to play. But when Raid Shadow Legends first reached out to sponsor me, I was super apprehensive because I thought it was just a really shallow, kind of boring, cash-grabby mobile game. But I have no idea why. Maybe I was just bored that day. I decided to actually give it a try. And after I started playing Raid Shadow Legends, I've actually really enjoyed it. If you want to play, of course, the link's in the description. I've been playing for a bit. We have a clan called the Old Zealands, currently led by Optimistic Dude, so shout out to you. First of all, it's not a pay-to-win game. You can get all the way to the end game without having to pay anything. There's no like paywalls that you run into. It has some time-saving features like auto battle to make sure you don't have to spend too much time playing and maintaining the game, but honestly, you probably play Football Manager, so you're used to time grinding games anyway. And the game actually has a lot of depth. There are over 700 champions with unique looks and abilities that you can try and put together as part of your team and then go take on dungeons. These types of games I don't really suck at, but it's been fun. And if you're thinking about playing the game, now is a good time because they're running a summer tavern event. After downloading Raid using my link or QR, just go to summertavern.plarium.com, enter your Raid ID, and start searching for hidden items to prepare a refreshing potion for a champion. And if you participate in it, you have the opportunity to win gaming consoles, gift cards, even a phone, as well as obviously a bunch of in-game stuff like legendaries and other in-game loot. You also have the ability to get YouTube Premium for 2 months for free if you just download Raid and start playing before July 17th. If you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses, like a starter pack, a huge starter pack with Epic Champion Tyrell, or another starter pack at level 25 that includes Epic Rector Draft. So if you actually feel like Raid Shadow Legends sounds and looks like a cool, fun game to play, just ignore the stigma and actually give it a try. You'll enjoy it. But now it's time to fast forward to the end of our first season in a world where the Premier League has no TV money, and our first victim has been claimed. Luton Town has gone into administration. Oh, I feel so bad. They got a 9-point deduction. That they were safe without that 9-point deduction. They would have relegated Nottingham Forest. Luton Town came up to the Premier League, and they're the only team that got promoted this past year that hadn't regularly been in the Premier League before that. And they're just looking around like, whoa, you other teams got money. How the hell did we deny? We didn't get anything. They tried to spend at a Premier League level and they got hit with a 9-point administration deduction. And while most of the rest of the league was still secure because of the holdover money from all of those previous huge cash injections, Burnley was also financially insecure. So we had two financially insecure teams, but Burnley survived. That's really who's getting screwed in this more than anybody. The teams that just get promoted and then have to compete with all these teams that have like residual wealth. But Liverpool actually managed to win the league. Aston Villa finished in second, obviously. Then City, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle, Manchester United. Nothing crazy. Same three teams got relegated, actually. But the way that they did it, particularly savage. Year 2, and the spending has noticeably gone down over the course of an entire summer. See, the first summer, all of the transfers that happened in real life that summer had already happened, so those transfers were on top of it. They were small, but that can kind of be explained away. The second summer, the biggest move was Jared Bowen for $54 million from West Brom to Liverpool. That's the biggest purchase the whole summer in the Premier League. Todd Bowley would have a stroke if that happened in real life. The second most expensive transfer was Abdul Fatawu to Tottenham, Samuele Ricci to Newcastle, Pedro Gonçalves to Newcastle, Victor Gyökeres to Man City. I did my best with the names. I know who those guys are. It's hard. Newcastle's flashing that Saudi money super hard. They also bought Mark Gay and Lewis Hall. But there were 9 transfers at a base value over $30 million for the entire summer. The 10th most expensive transfer the entire window for the Prem was the purchase of a Dinamo Zagreb player. But the transfers out were massive. Rafael Varane went to Al Ittihad for $118 million. $118 million. Crystal Palace sold Sheikh Doucouré to Al Ahly for $63 million. Cashing in, brother. Cashing in. But the biggest takeaway, very tellingly, remember where all the financial status was before the summer? Look at it now. Manchester City is rich. Brighton is rich. Everybody else is on okay, and Crystal Palace is already teetering in October. Things are getting perilous, and not just for the finances. Nottingham Forest is top of the league after 7 matches, with 18 points and a better goal difference than Liverpool and Manchester City. Ipswich, Middlesbrough, and Norwich are now also getting $0 from TV money in the Premier League, which means their survival would be remarkable. Not unless Crystal Palace goes broke. How are they insecure when they sold a guy for $63 million? They sold Doucouré for $63 million. Up to the end of the January window, Manchester City has restored order in the Premier League and taken a 9-point lead, with Nottingham Forest falling all the way back down to 9th. Ipswich, Crystal Palace, and Middlesbrough make up the relegation positions. Norwich doing incredibly, considering they got, like, no money. In January, spending, it slowed to an absolute crawl. There were 6 actual purchases by Premier League clubs total in January. Total. And one was for $51,000 by Ipswich. Tom Kearney. He's going to make all the difference. $700,000 by Brighton. $850,000 by Ipswich from Sunderland. One decently sized purchase of $34 million of Mika Marmol by Manchester City. But again, they're one of the 2 teams that's still rich. And a serious use of some loans. I mean, that's their only option left. You got to use a loan. By the time we get to the end of the second season, there are 2 clubs that are just straight up in debt. Wolves and Crystal Palace are both in an incredibly perilous situation. And we have a rash of clubs that are insecure, from Brentford to Everton to Middlesbrough and Fulham and Nottingham Forest. But remarkably, none of these endangered clubs actually entered into administration. Crystal Palace, who's in serious trouble, got relegated with Ipswich and Middlesbrough, who couldn't compete. Norwich ended up surviving with 42 points thanks to an absolutely ridiculous season from Adam Ida, who was second in that season with 21 goals, only behind Erling Haaland, but who isn't? And of course, Manchester City won the league. They finished that off. Fast forward to season 3. And season 3 has already started off hot, dude. I already see it at the bottom. Wolves is in administration, and Manchester United has gone into administration. Now, the Glazers How could you? Well, it's probably pretty obvious. Manchester United is trying to overcome that point deduction, but currently sits in 12th. Wolves, after 10 matches in November, is at -1 still. They're toast. 2 teams in administration, but some other teams are still spending. Arsenal and Newcastle broke out the checkbook over our third summer. 65 million for João Neves from Arsenal. Brais Mendes coming into Newcastle. Lenny Yoro coming into Newcastle, both for over 50 million. Rafinha coming to Arsenal for 53 million. Then Strahinja Pavlovic from Salzburg. Archie Gray from Leeds for 30 million. Remember how it was 9 guys over 30 million? We're down to 6 purchases over 30 million over the last summer. And some of the best players are leaving because the clubs need the money. Manchester United had to sell Kobe Mainu to Bayern Munich for just 66 million up front. Now it could rise to 97 million, which would make a little bit more sense, but that is painful. And Wolves had to sell Fabio Silva for 37 million to Porto. John Stones left City for all that he had for 38 million, but City still has a bunch of money. I don't think they needed to do that. Not enough big sales to keep these clubs afloat, honestly. The salaries have been absolutely slashed as well. There's only one team over 300 million per year in salary, and it's City, and they're almost at 400. There's only 5 teams spending over 200 million on salaries, and one of them's in administration. Every other club seems to have sorted out their finances, or at least because we're in the early part of the season, except for Everton, who is quite literally in debt. Once again, the January window saw almost no moves. There was a huge $71 million purchase of Jeremy Frimpong by Liverpool, who also bought Jose Marsa, but nobody else bought a player for over $1 million. It was just loans. Looking at the financial status at the end of Season 3 here, it is clear that the TV money is some sort of great equalizer. Everton has the lowest salary spend in the league. They're spending just $34 million a year on salary, which is incredibly low. If you know and have simulated and played Football Manager into the future, those salaries go up, and basically every team in the Premier League ends up with a salary over $100 million. Man City remains the only club over $300 million, and they've pushed it up to $411 million. They're still inventing sponsorships, aren't they? I can smell it. Tottenham are also insecure, so that would be a pretty Tottenham thing to do. Also, me just saying Tottenham are financially insecure is probably going to get me sued by Daniel Levy. The season came to a close with just Wolves and Manchester United having gone into administration, but to United's credit, despite a 9-point deduction, it actually managed to finish 8th. Everton did not overcome its crippling debt, I should say, and finished dead last with Brentford and Hull City getting relegated. Wolves also overcame its administration to stay up as well, which is just horrifically disappointing for the teams in the relegation zone. The league was won, though, by Arsenal, who finished on 91 points ahead of Man City, Liverpool, then Chelsea, Tottenham, Southampton, and Aston Villa, both getting the finish over United. In Season 4, it feels like the money might be returning a little bit. Ivan Toney has moved from Al Qadsiya to Newcastle, and Newcastle also bought Benjamin Henrichs from RB Leipzig, both for over 60 million. Chelsea bought Ferran Torres, but we know they'll spend money on anything. Southampton bought Nathan Patterson, which is big spending from not one of the big clubs in the league, and Xavi Simons was purchased by Arsenal. Manchester United even dropped nearly 40 million up to potentially 50 million for Tyler Dibling, who then, of course, suffered a groin strain and missed a significant amount of time. But you know what I always say, if you go into administration, spend money. They bought 2 players for at least $30 million in the summer window. But the sales of talented players kept going, from Jack Grealish to Al Ittihad to Alexander Zinchenko going out to Atletico Madrid. There's a serious talent drain. Virgil van Dijk also left this summer. He left for Al Nassr for just 15 million. He's old, 35 years old. But at the start of the season, there's actually nobody in administration. The teams seem to have adjusted. Fulham and Chelsea are financially insecure, with just City and Newcastle being the financially secure sides. The wage budget shrunk, and the teams have adapted. And by the end of the season, despite the fact that Bournemouth and Fulham and Norwich were all in serious financial trouble, nobody had actually gone into administration. The teams seem to have completed their adjustment. That can also be seen by a much bigger January window in terms of spending, including 2 big purchases like Kylian Sardea to Liverpool and Boubacar Kamara to Manchester City, and Juanlu to Liverpool, who are apparently splashing the cash. But then everything went all haywire because Tottenham won the entire league. That means 4 different teams have won the league in the past 4 years, even though City was dominant financially. Manchester United had recovered from administration and finished 3rd. And Norwich, unbelievably, I guess because the rest of the league kind of came back down to their level a bit, made it into Europe with a 9th place finish, which is also a sign, given they have this many European places in the Prem, that there is European success occurring too, even though the salaries are lower. It is absolutely no joke. In the first 4 years, Liverpool's gone to the Champions League final 3 times. City's also made it once as well. And Liverpool's won the last 2, including an all Premier League final in year 3 of the save. So it's not just that TV money creating that Premier League dominance, you know what I'm saying? And it's not just the Champions League either. The Europa League's been won by Chelsea, Newcastle, and then remarkably, Southampton, which is why they're in Champions League play even though they finished 12th. And in the 4th season, even Manchester United got in on the act, winning the Conference League in the year after they went into administration and had to sell Kobe Mainu. Oh, painful. And by year 5, the Premier League had officially financially recovered or balanced out from getting no TV money at all. Now, Wolves' years of financial trouble meant they got relegated alongside Ipswich and Hull City, who I feel like have already been relegated in this simulation. Liverpool returned to the top of the league, with Tottenham finishing 2nd, City 3rd, Newcastle 4th, Chelsea 5th, and Arsenal, Villa, Leeds. United finished 11th. Who the hell knows what happened there? Just administration caught up to them. But not one team at the end of the 5th season was financially insecure. The days of debt and administration were in the past. And just for kicks, Liverpool won a 3rd consecutive Champions League, beating City in the final again. As for England's national team, it stumbled with a round of 16 loss to Belgium at the 2024 Euros, but it rebounded in an okay fashion by beating South Korea, Spain, Germany, Serbia in the semi-final, and then France in the final to win the 2026 World Cup, despite the fact that the league had no TV money at all. So even though there weren't a bunch of $100 million transfers, the loss of TV money didn't really hurt the Premier League that much. And after a couple of seasons, the teams all just figured it out with lower wage budgets. Except for all the clubs that went into administration, to which I can only say, ha, tough luck. You just didn't know what you were up against. I'm omnipotent. I'm taking away your money now. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like this one. We started Lionel Messi's career over, and he ended up in Australia for a spell, which makes sense. I always thought of him as a kangaroo riding son of a gun. All right, I'll see y'all on stream.